Miley, thank you for having me. How about Esteban? A huge pleasure. No, my pleasure, and thank you. Thanks for inviting me to your first show. It's an honor. No, the honor is mine, please. Did you see the march on Saturday? In what term if I saw her? Yes, if you were watching, turn on the TV, the back-to-back. No. Let's say, I dedicated myself to work. Didn't you see her? But what kind of reading do you have? Look, I feel sorry for the fact that people are still being deceived. I mean, notice that it's very similar to what happened with the university march. They made up a lie. In this case, they edited part of my speech at Davos, a 29.5-minute speech. There is a fragment that I dedicate in everything that is demolishing the Walk building. There is a part that I dedicate to gender issues. Basically, that lasts about a minute and a half, and they made a fragment, took one of the 14-second examples, and put a punchline on it from the final part of that block. From constructing that lie, the media that are obviously desperate because I suspended them the official guideline. So obviously, the media in general are haters of the government directly. Aren't they government haters? Yes, let's not even say they qualify as opponents anymore, they are. There is a visceral hatred manifest. Firm there a lie spreads, and firm that the march slows down, and the same old sinister faces end up appearing. Because beyond how it might have felt, let's say, those human beings who are involved with what LGBT is. What one sees is that the same old sinister faces appeared, right? Let's say the trade unionists appeared. I want to know, let's say, what is the historical relationship between trade unionists and this group? The governor of the province of Buenos Aires appeared. There is a murder every 5 days. The province is a bloodbath. There was the case of Lucas, yes. And yet, let's say, it appears to make political noise at a march. Firm Kisilov. Yes, not only that, they also joined the ghost train that make up Lusto, La Reta, Santoro, Lolita Carrillo. Let's say La C. Empora, I say Cristina Fernández Kirchner supported, let's say, that is, so what you see is the ghost train. Apart from that, let's say, in that demonstration, let's say that I am, you see, for example, flags of the Communist Party, where the communists and socialists, let's say, murdered homosexuals, or let's say, or tried to make a march, let's say, in Palestine of these characteristics, because they had flags of Palestine. So what you really realize is that it actually ended up being a political march where all the anti-Milei people got together, and me. Are they many or few? Look, the truth is that I would tell you that the fact that everyone has to get together to face me. The ones that it shows is that they are clearly in a situation of weakness, and also that they have to do it based on a lie, which is the fallacy of the straw man, right? I say that it is very irregular. I mean, in fact, in my speech at Davos, I just pointed it out, right? This thing about how the left operates, that is, let's say it operates with the straw man fallacy, that is, they say that you said, and firm that they criticize you because it is the criticism that is comfortable for them. And then, let's say it shows that you lost before you weighed. That is a statement of extreme inferiority, because if you have to lie about that person to attack a guy, then let's say you lie about the argument, let's say, or you fall into a fallacy dominate. Look how interesting, he says no good against a fascist government. In a fascist government, let's say one of these marches wouldn't take place, would it? That is, if we were in something undemocratic, let's say. You would make yourself easier that way. Yes. Well, but for that, well, look how interesting, I say ignorance. Because, for example, when you try, I say first Nazi, National Socialism, I mean you have to take charge, guys. They were from yours, I mean they were from the lefties, it was National Socialism. In fact, fascism is also socialism. Mussolini himself said everything inside the state, nothing outside the state, and nothing against the state. That is, let's say, with which it is clear that let's say nothing to do with the ideology that I have. I say that it is liberalism, and as defined by our greatest hero in all history is liberalism. It is the unrestricted respect for the projective life of others based on the principle of aggression, and in defense of the right to life, freedom, and property. Notice that the ignorance of these people, they do not realize that they work on a collective definition. That is why they are collectivists, however, that is the subject with which they work is a collective. However, I work with a subject that is the individual, so I have no common ground. Actually, let's say those who end up doing fascism about it because the slogans and the things they say are typical of fascism. I know you explained it, you answered it in some other interview, but I never asked you. And what do you think about the D community or the collective more? Okay. Let's see, I say this, I've said it many times, the question is, suppose the following, let's put it like this. Suppose, I don't know, that you were in a homosexual relationship, let's say, or some relationship, let's say, that contemplates some kind of these characteristics. The question is, why are you attacking me? Not at all. How did you affect my right to life? Not at all. How do you affect my property? Not at all. How do you affect my freedom? Not at all. So let's say, I have nothing to say, do whatever you want. In other words, what bothers me is only that you want to use the state to impose things. Basically, that's the problem, which is the center. It's the central point that I attack in Davos, when I attack wokeism, the woke. Why? What is wokeism? What does this have to do with Cs? Basically, faced with the defeat of Marxism, the facts, that is, the truth is that no matter how hard it is for them to understand it, real socialism, communism, the wall fell down and crushed the lefties. That is, it became clear that, let's say, this system does not work, that in addition to where it was applied, it was a failure in the economic, in the social, in the cultural, and also never forget that they killed 150 million human beings. It's a killer system. That is, and let's also say, it always had to be applied by force, which means that at least let's say, that is, it is not a very pleasant system. That is then, let's say, in front of that fall, what is post-Marxism appears. You can also call it, let's say, cultural Marxism, and basically what it does is try to re-establish the class struggle, but in other aspects of the life of society. So, for example, look at this, you always have the logic of let's say that there is an oppressed and an oppressor. In the original class struggle, the oppressed was the worker, the oppressor was the entrepreneur. But hey, that system went down, it didn't work, so they had to change. But the logic keeps telling me the same, there is an oppressed, and there is an oppressor. So what's the big deal? What post-Marxism does is generate these conflicts in different parts of society. So, for example, then men against women appears, that is, the version of radical feminism appears. Being that feminism was originally a cause of liberalism. I say the first one who dealt with this about 1750 was Jeremy Bentham, who was a liberal. In other words, the cause of feminism was a liberal cause because it established equality before the law. Now look at this. Today radical feminism then is men against women, yes. Now and if you do not adhere to this format that they propose, then you are a misogynist. For example, then the label appears, from the label that appears. The censorship, the cancellation. In other words, woochism is profoundly violent. That is, notice that there are journalists here who say no, before Twitter was better because you couldn't say what you wanted. Of course, they said what you wanted. That is, everyone who said what you didn't want to hear, let's say, was censored, cancelled. Were there actually blacklists here? No. Like, there were blacklists. Of course there were blacklists. I mean, several of us were on those blacklists. So that's one. Now there are blacklists. What? Are there blacklists now? I don't have blacklists, but I mean, in fact, let's say, I took the guidelines away from the media, so no, not me. But I mean, now what you should ask, I don't know, is Mr. Kicillof, who puts tons of money in his related media to protect him from the disaster he's doing in the province of Buenos Aires. And that. But I want to, because this is not only this topic. Then you have another situation, and I still don't know, the man with the entrance to nature. Well, in that case it's environmentalism. So when you say, and the whole climate change agenda. So when you grab and present the empirical evidence that they tell you no, you are a flat earther. Because also the worst of all is that behind that agenda is the murderous agenda of abortion. That is, or for example, the original peoples against the Europeans. That is then, and notice that in each of those, let's say, you are, for example, if you do not adhere to the gender ideology, then you are a homophobic. No, you're not a homophobe. You're neither homophobic nor transphobic. I mean, in fact, you notice that the phrase that I say, that this is tremendous, right? I say that gender ideology taken to the extreme leads to abuse. That is, they are, let's say, pedophiles. And I made several examples. I'm going to repeat that, the gender ideology. Gender ideology taken to the extreme leads, that is, let's say, leads to abuse. Therefore, they are pedophiles. And that seems like a minor thing, and it's not a minor thing. Because look at this, you have different issues of gender ideology. You have a man who perceives himself as a woman, and men does thinks he is, let's say, and goes and climbs a boxing ring, and blows up women. That is, in fact, the Italian boxer, let's just say that for the fight, she is actually a friend of Giorgia Meloni. And exactly what I was telling her is, the last Olympic Games. Of course, when we say he put two hands that were not full hands, that is, they were. I mean, she said it shook her whole body, so, I mean, if they stayed, she'd kill her. So, let's say, there you have a case. You have another case, for example, the case of a man who puts him in prison. Let's say he perceives himself as a woman. Let's say he goes with women, rapes himself. Let's say a lot of women, gets one pregnant. Let's say nonsense. I mean, or is it okay with you? Did you know that, for example, the province of Buenos Aires has 240 hormone centers? Do you think so? No, it looks like a horror to me. I mean, it looks like a horror to me. Let's see, let's say, that is, it seems to you that a creature, that a minor is in a position to know if we say. I mean, the truth is, I don't know what people think. Now, from my point of view, having a creature's genitals amputated, I say, while having its head filled in, is something else other than what its hybridology says. Well, the thing about separating gender from biology, I mean, it's not free. Did you see that 10-year-old kid who says he's trans? Well, but it seems to you, let's say social. Did you see him? Yes, of course I saw it. What did you think? No, not to me, let's say, or let's see if he perceives himself that way. I say let him follow the passage of time and see what he said. Because what we have to understand here is that, let's say, if you were to amputate that creature's penis, let's say, God is going to want a lot of problems. First, because it is irreversible. Secondly, not only is it irreversible, it's going to have to live harmonized all the time, let's say, in order to live. The same if we say, that is, they were against the reproductive, female reproductive system. I mean, then you have a problem there. So you want to understand it. Do you understand? Now suppose the following. Now we stop talking about children. I think it's an atrocity to do that to children. Do you understand? I mean, I think they should let the time run out and let him make the decision being a responsible adult. Being a responsible adult, let's say, a theme appears there. The question is if you want to do it. From my point of view, if he wants to do it, let him do it. Do you, for example, want to self-perceive yourself as a seal and want to become a seal? I don't have any problems. What seems wrong to me is that he believes, is that you consider that I have to pay the bill for that. I mean, because then let's say it's not. That's not a right, that's a privilege. Now you don't get fucked by trans girls, but the trans quota does. And the trans quota is wrong. But it is not the trans quota. It is the quota for anything that is wrong. Because it is as what is called a positive discrimination, it is to violate the... Let's say, I have a question. Would it be okay for you to say that the positions, I don't know, in the state were hereditary? No, obviously not. So we are still in the era of absolutism. I mean then we have a monarch, and I don't know, and his family and his friends are privileged to have an office because of the fact that it is by 12 of last name. Well, it's an aberration. Well, this is the same, this is identically the same. You realize that it is identically the same. I mean, they have a quota for that. I say I am in favor of society, not an absolutist society. The liberal society is in favor of merit. So what I'm saying is, what we came here to propose is equality before the law. Because this is what happens with this situation. This generation of conflict where these, if you will, these collectives appear, with which let's say that is, well, from the opposite side to us who are liberals, that is, this is the individual. But look at this, then that conflict between oppressed and oppressor. How is it solved? How? Bringing in the state, the liberating state. But the consequence of that is that you expand the size of the state, expand the influence of the state, that is. And you have to finance that. And what is that paid for with? With more taxes. In other words, it is an agenda aimed at making the state grow. So, what is the goal of that agenda? Artificially create conflicts for the state to solve, and let's see, what was the women's ministry for? If Alberto Fernandez fucked up the woman, what was it used for? If Alperovich raped the niece, if Espinosa harassed his secretary. If in Chaco let's say there is Strahovski's boy. Of course, do you understand me? Or let's say, or they have among their ranks also Aguasora. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? So let's say in other words, and do you think that was fixed with the women's ministry with little songs and painting little stools? No, this was fixed with what? Heavy-handed. We dropped 50%, let's say, crimes in the last year. Yes. And we also lowered all crimes against women. Come on, we did it ourselves. Hard Hand would have to put Kilov. Look, Kishilov would have to come out. Let's see, Kishilov, why are you marching? He is marching because he is also part of that progress agenda, the walk agenda. Why? Because let's say, for example, he adheres to Zaffaroni, so that is also, let's say, a derivative of that same Zaffaroni agenda, which is to subvert values. That is, where the victim becomes the victimizer, and the victimizer the victim. In other words, a total madness. So in other words, the province of Buenos Aires is a no-man's land, in favor of those of the criminals. In fact, you know that I can even link these topics to you. Are you telling me? What does Zaffaroni have to do with? What does LGBT have to do with gender ideology? Well, is the ideology generous? What am I saying? That in the limit constitutes abuse, that is, they are theophiles. Note that I also talk about ideology, and those are documented. For example, a TED Talk in Germany, where he says no, 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 pedophilia is a sexual orientation. It's not a sexual orientation, you can't mess with guys, I mean, guys are sacred. That said, check this out. One of the most renowned cases of Zaffaroni was the case of the goalkeeper Tirabowski, the goalkeeper who abused minors. No, if the light is off, it is not abuse. Now, no, but take a look at this, let's say, so that you don't think it's so far away and so somewhere else, that is, we have it here. Let's say, why do we have it here? Because he was Zaffaroni in the Tirabowski case. And you say no good, but it stays there. No, it doesn't stay there. Let's say there is the video in a Judica program where Mr. Pablo Duggan defends the goalkeeper Tirabowski. Defends Zaffaroni in that ruling, saying that there is no abuse because the light is stopped. I mean, I would like to know if one of your children was involved in that situation. And to come to Duggan and tell you that no, it's not a crime because the light was off. Or let's say, and you say no, well, that's a case. No, it's not a case. Do you know that there is a group of pedophiles? Yes. I say they are called virtuous pedophiles. I mean, the virtuous pedophiles. Do you know who they are? It's the pedophiles who have this feeling of wanting to abuse minors, but then they restrain themselves and only consume child pornography. As if they weren't, let's say, those kids being abused, right? Well, let's say Mr. The Rest Tenenbaum defends, let's say, virtuous pedophiles. I say because he for him. Taking it out of context. No, yeah, well, yeah. Let's just say he's the one who lives taking out of context all the time. Let's say the statement is very clear, and let's say his colleagues point it out to him. So let's just say, I mean, he's definitely a defender of virtuous pedophiles. That is, he then grabbed and reticulated. I'm saying he was wrong. I mean, yeah, well, okay, let's say. But let's say, that is, his methodology of all the time, let's say, to be taken out of context, and he was not taken out of context. It was a phrase that he did say. I mean, it's not that he made a sentence, they cut a piece and pasted it with another, because that's interesting too. Let's say, for example, let's say the most aberrant case, let's say, is Mr. Luis Novarecio, in an interview with Tenenbaum, saying that I said things that I literally did not say, either lying openly or lying openly. In other words, I would almost say to you that let's say his attack, let's say, or be systematic. God given the attack, let's say, that he has had during the last years towards my person. Accepting any kind of lies, accusing me of any kind of aberrations, I could say then that he is a heterophobe. That is to say, obviously everyone who does not agree with him, then he is going to attack him and say things like that. Because that is in the logic of gawking. The gawking. What does he do? Grab, let's say, invent a right for you, or create this dispute between the oppressed and the oppressor, then they come to liberate you. Or we pass from the ideas of freedom to the idea of liberation. This is resolved with the state. Yes, it is solved by giving, say, privileges, or affirmative action, or positive discrimination, yes. So I say, and the one who does not adhere to that puts you on a label, and from that label, they cancel you. Which was the same thing they did to you on Twitter. I say that's why let's say or be Elon Musk for me is a hero, except for the West. Why? And notice that coincidentally all these guys that I mentioned to you there are no, but now Twitter is horrible, we have to stop Twitter. Why? Because let's say, for example, Teens Mao himself told him that he liked the previous Twitter better. The Twitter that censored those who did not think like him. Javier. That is to say, I bought from no. Then, let's talk about censorship. Besides, they talk about undemocratic, and actually they say, socialism, one of the things he discovered, is to go for what Hayek called unlimited democracy. Do you understand me? Because let's say that it is the dictatorship of the majorities, when in fact the essence of democracy is to take care of the largest, let's say the smallest of all minorities, which is the individual. Why else would I ask you a question? Do you believe in democracy? Yes, of course. Well, okay, then yes, obvious, but let's say of liberal, Republican democracy. Let's say the one that the individual respects. Because if not, I ask you a question. Four wolves and a chicken get together, and they are going to vote what is eaten at night. That's the democracy they say it is, not a supreme value. Exactly. This is the democracy of the majority. This is the kind of democracy that socialists promote. So when you point out that they say no to you, you are an anti-democratic. When you tell them what you don't like, when they don't like you to tell them, they call you hate speech. That is to say, everything that you point out the error, they cross you out and look at the level of brainwashing that generates it. Let's say, in fact, the note of no with Denneman says, oh, I have to explain that water gets wet. That is, notice that it is clear that he does not seem to be a very limited person who could never think outside the mold. That the gap presented him, and obviously I say he is not the only one, that is because all these people, when you take them out of that line, they label you fallacy dominate and censor you. Let us remember that the Lord was born in the channel that you are in. He asked for the censorship of my person, uncle. I'm not that. Yeah, of course, he said I had to shut up. I don't remember. Of course, exactly, it was mounted on a statement of Pacheco. You named a lot of people, and even some colleagues. You also named Christina there. Do you care what Christina says? No. How? No. Don't you care what Christina says? No, I don't care what any of the politicians here say. They're all petty, all cabbage. I'm here to discuss something else. I mean, they don't even understand that I went to Davos to argue. In other words, they are very cheap, very little thing. Christina from cabbage. Yes, Christina, I mean Christina can't, let's say, that is Christina exists in Argentina, nothing else. No one recognizes in her is a leader of anything. Now you tell me that you discussed in Davos and the United States. And Macri, in which category is he? Look, Macri positioned Argentina well. In international terms, I mean, I would have gone for a truly liberal agenda, and he went for a liberal agenda. That is, a social democratic agenda. But let's say, do you talk to him? The last time we communicated, he sent me a message on the subject of congratulating me on the reduction of the withholdings. That you saw him. We cut to taxes. Yes, I mean, it was loss today. How is it that you say to when you put on the screen? The graph. No. The socket. They were not the sockets when they put on the screen, they had the screens with the low 12. A graph. Sure, exactly. A graph. No, it wasn't a graphic, it was on the screen, I don't know how they call it. Okay. Back to Macri. Much has been said about the agreement, in the agreement, go together and separate. It was read, it was listened to, and that there was a lot of anger in recent days with him, but above all. Is there such a fuss? I don't know, it doesn't manifest in our links. For example, take a look at this, the clean tab theme. As I said, I'm going to commit to sending a new project. Of course, that was coordinated by Luis Petri, with Alejandro Fargosi, with Gaston Mara, and with Silvia Los Parados. I have no problem with the pro-people. Didn't have any kind of problem. No. I didn't have any kind of problem putting together lists together. I have an excellent relationship, and I mean, let's say what I'm about is my job description, to keep lowering inflation, to keep growing the economy, to make poverty go down, let's say end insecurity. What is your rival today? No, God, I don't think in those terms. So, I'm thinking about fulfilling my job description. Let's say or be me, let's say or be my rival, basically are the let's say the goals that I have to go fulfilling. In other words, my enemy is inflation, my enemy is poverty, my enemy is indigence, my enemy is illiteracy. My enemy is people being killed, let's say from like rats. This is very personal. I think the main concern today in Argentina, this is very personal, I can get confused, is insecurity. Yes, especially in the province of Buenos Aires and in the Conurbano. You just talked a little bit about whether the national government can do something about it. Some people even talk about intervention. I know it's a rather bizarre issue. But what should be clear to the population is that Argentina is a federal country. In other words, security is a responsibility that the government of the province of Buenos Aires has in the province of Buenos Aires. There is no doubt. So now, I warn that chill off is useless. That is, he proves it systematically. That is, he insists on giving me the reason. Not only that, but he also has a vision, let's say along the lines of Zaffaroni, which is in favor of criminals. Well, let's say people respond to incentives. If you look at the calamity that was the province of Santa Fe, especially Rosario, let's say Dr. Bullrich came in with the Bandera plan. Look how Rosario is now. Yes, I improved the situation. And what do you think about it? Well, Diego, I warn you that when we assumed, that is, there were 9,000 pickets per year, now there are none. If Kicillof calls you and says, President, help me with security in the province of Buenos Aires, what do you do? Let's say, I am the president of the nation, and the people of Buenos Aires also voted for me. So let's say where I have to go to help, I help. The problem is that if he doesn't want me to help him, let's say the problem is that he is part of the problem, not the solution. Cristina too. Well, Cristina, let's say, is responsible for one of the most sinister movements in Argentine history, which is Quizerism. That is, Quizerism destroyed all the moral values of this country. That is, it came to break everything, to promote the garbage of socialism of the excise century, and thus they had left us on the way to Venezuela. Did you see about the Y deposit? Bark and deposit. No, Lolly Esposito. Bark and deposit. Did you see that I was cheering for her to be a candidate? Did you see it or not? Well, let her be a candidate. What do I know? I mean, God has all the legal elements to be a candidate. Let her be a candidate. Wouldn't I know about her? Let's see, I like a different kind of music. What do I know? Last night I saw a masquerade ball, a version at the Metropolitan in New York, directed by Levine. There was Pavarotti, and there was Leo Nucci. I mean, I say the music I listen to, and if I don't listen to the Rolling Stones. You're talking to the vice president of Villarolo, aren't you? Let's say. I saw him soon, I said, he's not part of the government. Or the day-to-day running of the government. It's that, well, it's not part of the daily, but let's say, as long as you solve your problem, the task you have to do. What is the problem of? Would you choose a school as a candidate again? Decisions are made based on what you are in the context in which you are, and I think let's say the decisions I made at the time, let's say they were the right ones, and indeed the results accompanied me. No, there is no doubt about that. You just talked about the cabotage agenda, and that you told what happened in Davos and in the United States. What caught your attention the most? First of America, when did you go to Trump's inauguration? The United States was shocking. Shocking why? Yes, I had already been very shocked when I was invited to Mar-a-Lagos, that is, I really was shocked. But one of the things that happened to me that I really didn't expect, beyond the awards and so on, and the reception that I didn't expect either. One of the things that happened to me while I was waiting to enter the room, you saw that it was very, very clearly separated. There were on one side there were the deputies, the senators, the governors, and certain authorities. And then on one side there were those who are the officials, and the friends of Trump, so to speak, and on the other side, there were the former presidents of the United States, and some former officials and others. And it was my turn to be there next to Giorgia Meloni and the Vice President of China. But while I was waiting to enter, something very happened to me. The day of the Assumption. The day of the Assumption. If something happened to me that I didn't, I swear, Esteban, I didn't imagine it. representatives and senators came, as many of the Republicans as the Democrats, and took selfies with me. I mean, that caught my attention. And another thing that also caught my attention a lot is that everyone congratulated me for what I was doing, for the achievements that the government was having, and congratulated me very especially for everything I was doing in defense of the ideas of freedom. I mean, and they were giving me credit for that. But what do I know? I mean, if you've listened to that once, twice, 3 times, it's like you're saying, well, it looks like a lot of cassette already because of that somehow. What really surprised me and left me very, very impressed was the topic that they were coming. And each one made specific references to me, to specific measures. That is, let's see, I say as president, I look at the forest. I am not looking at the branches of the little trees. And they came to me with very specific issues. Technical and deep. Of course, exactly, I mean to give I should have been with all the ministers to answer there. Then something else that we also say. And how do you think they knew that? No good, because good not for nothing. Let's say our model is being taken as a reference, let's say, by everyone. Let's say today the last stage of The Economist is dedicated to deregulation, and he just talks about the Argentine case. And one of the things he says is good, the United States is doing it and Europe needs it, right? Let's say basically. Now what you're saying is good, but Milei spent 18 months gestating this. Do you remember that the chantist that said here named Milei has no plan? If we had not had a plan, we would have saved through the air. But then do you understand what I'm saying to you? In a few months. So what you're saying is, let's see, Milei had it armed 18 months ago. So I'm saying the point of that. That is, the United States, the guy has to arm it now, and Europe, the poor thing. But I don't know if he has the convictions. But men does, that is, the stage I'm saying, not only that we say or it's bad. That despite the domestic market, the cheap political cabbage here, I mean, I was the cover of The Economist. I mean, I published articles in The Economist, I was the cover of Time. Let's say the last stage of The Economist is dedicated to our regulatory proposal. The International Monetary Fund itself, in the meeting that I have with Kristalina Georgieva, in which I attend with Toto Caputo, and with Leon Marcourt, who is our representative on the edge, in the background. Just once we evacuated all the points, let's say they were the doubts that the International Monetary Fund had. Let's say we started talking about issues related to other issues, to growth and so on. And sure, Levin asked me if I could summon Federico Sturzenegger to, let's say, transfer the experience of what we are doing. Then, and at the same time, let's say some people call me Mr. Chainsaw is Mr. Chainsaw. Yes. And others tell me let's say or else. They grab me and tell me, outside. I mean, so nothing that's impressive the impact we're having. So I say that let's say, I say, you know what? I want to make Argentina great again. I want Argentina to be a power. So I can't be arguing with the Lilliputians who brought the country down. You just named the fund. Do you think there will be an agreement finally? Is there going to be an outlay? At what point is that? Look, it's necessary, isn't it necessary? Look, we are working on advancing an agreement, but we are convinced that for Argentina to do well, it depends on Argentina. And in that, let's say our strategy, let's say of hardness in fiscal policy. That is to say that the zero deficit is not negotiated under any point of view, and to continue maintaining a hard monetary policy. That is no. Let's say we believe that we have to arm ourselves as if everything depended on ourselves. Well, if later we have financial bridges to speed up, let's say things. For example, Of course, that is, we, without the help of the fund, lifted the stocks in 2026. Next year. No, but let's say, or be the 1st of January of the 2026, there is no such thing as a trap. On the 1st of January of 2026, there is no such thing as a trap. And if there is disbursement of the fund before, we can do it faster. You have to see how the program is structured, how the funds are allocated, and that will determine the guide to the exit of CO. You named the withholdings. You said that Macri congratulated you on that fact. It's a gradual and semi-annual discharge, isn't it? Is that going to be accentuated? How is it? Let's see. What we have said is, a part, let's say, went to the regional economies, was removed completely and permanently. The other in a transitory way, given the complex situation that the field is going through. Now, as the economy grows, and we have resources, we are going to continue lowering taxes. I said I was going to lower taxes. Nobody said that. No one believed that we were going to achieve the zero deficit. Because apart from that, Argentina in the last 123 years had all the years of fiscal deficit. And because the years it had exceeds, and it was because it did not pay the debt. But we had overcome, and financial still honoring the commitments, and without making release without payment, or any accounting drawings. In other words, we had a real financial surplus. If you talked about the growth of the economy, is the economy growing? Look, the data for the third quarter, basically what you have is that it's say 3.9. That means that the economy is traveling in the third quarter if you annualized it at levels of 17%. Consumption at levels of 20 and investment at levels of 50%. If you take the last data, let's say of the GDP, let's say it would be showing you the seasonally adjusted one and annualize it. Let's say you would be traveling at a speed of 11%. That is to say, then when you look at the numbers of the economy, in fact, you look at this, let's say. Or let's say the economic companies of Manderland. Let's say how everyone screwed up. Remember when we were talking about the short 5? Yes. There's going to be a short B. There's not going to be a short B. Was it saying? No. Either there's going to be a Great Depression, or GDP was going to collapse, or there was going to be an L. That we were going to stagnate later, or if there was a recovery, it was the Nike pipette, but let's say soft. Take a look at this. The statistical drag that the previous government left us was 2.8. Negative, that is to say, if we arrive at 2.8. It's just that nothing fell during the year. It is considered that the year will end with 2 negatives. That is to say that it means that when you take the tip of December, producer, 8 growth. Of course, when you take the seasonally adjusted monthly December peak against the previous years, the economy ended up higher. That is to say, we made the biggest adjustment in the history of mankind, 5 in the Treasury, 10 in the central bank. An experience of half that caliber would have caused the GDP to fall 15%. Imagine that we also brought to 8 statistical drag. It's ending at the quarterly frequency -2, at the monthly frequency it's going to end at the top. Do you realize that? And in the middle the wholesale inflation, that was coming to 54%, we lowered it to 0.8. That is, from traveling at the level of 17,000, we lower it to levels of 10. And not only that, but also the monthly frequency poverty was at 57 in January, and today it is at 36. It means that we have lifted 21 percentage points of the population out of poverty. Do you know what that means? That we lifted 10 million Argentines out of poverty. Javier, when you were even obsessed and watching before you took office, you just got off your cell phone. And you were talking about the issue of hyperinflation, weren't you? How he was traveling on the daily inflation, and so on. Are you still making that account today, or did you stop looking at it? No, this is one-on-one Billardism. The knife is in your teeth every day. Look, I'm going to tell you something. In other words, the issue of inflation has not been resolved. No. Check this out. There is a cycle that Santiago Orillo was doing for a streaming called Carayo. Yes. Then it's brilliant. Brilliant like everything Ori does. Santiago, he's like Javier's filmmaker. Yes, he's my filmmaker. If we say, sorry I said. And then he grabbed and took some archetypal movies. So for example, there in the first are our three deliveries. In the first one, he talks about the Rocky saga, and it's very interesting, because at one point he deals with the Rocky III saga. Rocky Tours, that is, he's the champion, he's defending the title, let's say they make a monument for him. But the guy gets into the shit, so to speak, he mouths it. Mr. is coming. Tail in mouth, cover long. Then after that he appears to polo back and reconquers the whole title. You look at this. Last meeting of the year, I have all the surveys, all the measurements, I feel. So when do I see all the numbers? Do you know what I'm doing? We have the cabinet meetings in the Eva Peron room. I asked for the chainsaw to be taken to the living room. I had it new, so I put it in the living room. I mean, they all came, they were looking at the chainsaw, they were all with the chainsaw. Why did I do that? Because we're winning 2-0 in the 22.5 minute. There is no place to relax here. Bilardo said it was the worst result. Of the finger, let's say, I mean it's a dangerous result. It's always better to win anyway. Yes, of course. But I say aside from that, I told him the chainsaw does not give way, it does not stop, and if you allow me, I will tell a couple of new things. One of the wonderful things that happens to us, I mean we're watching the networks, we're monitoring all the time. We watch the networks a lot. But it's the way to be monitoring all the things. Isn't it surprising to you that every time a waste appears, I fix it very quickly? A waste of the government if you. Waste of that which is. Because I'm checking the networks all the time, let's say. I mean, then I automatically see a problem, boom. I pick up the phone, ask and solve. Let's just say there's no place to rest here. I can't rest on my laurels here, and nothing. That is to say, here the knife is between the teeth all day, every day. You never rest here, you never relax, because on the other side is the enemy. They are not adversaries, they are enemies. Because they are the ones who made Argentina outside, the first world power. They turned it into a miserable country. From the middle of the table down. Outsiders are enemies. How? Outsiders are enemies. No, no. The collectivists who destroyed this country, and who Mundez are enemies, and used noble causes to arm marches against the government. And they all get together because they are such cowards that one by one they can't. But I say, anyway, I'm already used to this. I say gladiator, and fight against how much? There's not a problem, so I'm not saying. Me ne frega. I mean, I'm used to it. I mean, the election campaign was something like that, wasn't it? All against one. Who won? Ready. Okay. So I say, I mean, that doesn't scare me. I mean, I'd even tell you that I'm having fun. Because they are so Lilliputian that if it is not abuse. So, what am I saying? In that context, you cannot relax and look at this. One of the things that happens when you look at the networks is, okay, there are many references, that is what I vote, it is much more than what I vote. So what did Manuel Adorni do brilliantly? He made a survey of all the campaign promises. Or he grabbed and took all the campaign promises, all of them. You know that, let's say, the history of politicians in Argentina is that politicians lie to you, they lie to you all the time. They are criminals who lie to you, they openly lie to you. They are the most immoral thing that exists. I mean, his life is to cheat on you. Well, the life of Argentine politicians is to deceive you. Exactly, yes, those who are part of the state party. You were marching him to all those together the other day. Is the state party equal to caste? Of course, exactly, they are all those who live off the state. That is, the state party. Let's say there are the thieving politicians, there are the prebendary businessmen, there are the scoundrels. There are the journalists in surplus, corrupt, yes. And there are, let's say, that is, the professionals functional to that, because there are professionals who live from that. So in that context, that's the state party. Then look how interesting what Manuel did. He grabbed and took the campaign promises. It's a survey. If you remember, they said that what I was proposing was crazy. Nothing of what I proposed could be done. It was all impossible. Starting with the zero deficit, right? Which we accomplished on top in the first month. But having said that, what is the interesting thing? So we had a very ambitious program. How long has the government been in office? 25% of the time. Close to the first part of 25% of the time. So if I came with 25% fulfillment of the promises, would that be fine? No. Yes. Yes. Of course. Mathematically. Yes. No. Do you know how long we have kept our promises? How many? 78. Did you hear? 78% of the things we promised are being fulfilled. And we're not going any faster because of the hindering machine. And also comply drives the prevent machine. The party, let's say, that is the party of the state. Let's say he spends his time asking for privileges. What's more, the chainsaw is following now. Look at what we're going to, for example, now we're going against 50 state agencies. I mean, then let's try. We are going to close some of them. For 60%, let's say we are looking to close it. Not only that, there are some that we are thinking about in transforming them, and others in merging them, that is, with which the bike follows. New organisms that have not yet been mentioned. For example, 50. No, we're going to close them down, or we're going to transform them, or we're going to merge them. I say that for example. Then we have another very important topic. Argentina has 27,000 laws in force. 27,000 laws, 70,000 decrees, and 200,000 resolutions, circulars, and so on. So, what are we going to do? We are going to talk as well as the Elon Musk method. We are going to ask each agency to make a sort of digest of the things they are using. And what are we going to do? Once you have what you are using, what do you do? Everything else you do. And are you going to throw it away? Are you not going to repeal it? Obviously. You realize that, let's say, the levels of structural reforms that you're going to need Congress for the laws. Well, but I say anything that is decrees. If I say that, I say laws are 27,000, decrees are 70,000. Of the circulars and that kind of thing, let's say it's to 7,000. So let's see if we say, in those 50 organisms, do you remember any? Let's not say, I mean I don't have a list in my head. Okay. And is that going to be announced in the next few hours? Yes, of course, obviously. I say these things are part of Decree 7025. The 7025th. Of course. When you plunged. That's the 7023rd. 7020. Of course. Let's see, explain it to me again. Of course, all this is part of the reforms of the 7025th. That is, the 7023rd, is the, let's say, the first deregulatory decree. Well, now let's go with the 7025. Yes, correct, and how is it going to be published? Well, let's say when we finish finalizing the details. I think what worries you most about Argentina today, what I tell myself the most, look, I don't worry about things, so I take care of things. So my thing is to continue lowering inflation, to continue lowering poverty, to continue lowering indigence, to make the economy grow, to make, let's say, that insecurity continues to fall, to insert Argentina into the world. I take care of things. I'm not theorizing. No, I mean, they put me here to solve problems. I have to round up because friend Adorni is going to kill us. It is decorated is better than the Tide one. Well, do we have to comply? Do we have to comply with the times? No. Step. I think it's a slap in the face of Argentines. Does it happen? No, because it's a sinister invention of Nestor Kirchner. I mean, I was using it to do a big survey and squeeze people later based on the results, right? No, the box. And to you it seemed like a sinister instrument. Do you think it will be voted only once this year? Let's just say, you can't be annoying people all the time. Politics, let's say, has to be at the service of people, not people at the service of politics. Would you like them to finish all together in front of Christian kinderism? Let's say, I think we have to put all of us who are in favor of the city of freedom against the state party. And do you think that's going to be able to be achieved? Why not? They said that I could not achieve the zero deficit, and yet, we achieved it in 1 month. So look, man, if I tell you any questions. The key to this government is the art of making possible what the caste told you was impossible. That is, it was also impossible to make an adjustment, and like the one we did, and we did it. It was also impossible that if we made an adjustment of half the one we did, GDP would not have fallen 15%. And yet it ended up higher. Let's say, it seemed impossible for poverty to fall. We lowered it by 21 points. We lifted 10 million people out of poverty. Yes, now finally. If you define some impossible to me like this, let's go and break it too, Dale. And sometimes that's our challenge. There is a sector of the citizenry that, due to different circumstances, does not like you, does not like your gaze. How? Life? I saw her. Leave a message to those people if you want. That regardless of the fact that they don't love me, regardless of the fact that they may not like my ways, regardless of the fact that they may not share my ideas, I still work for all Argentines, both for those who love me and for those who don't. Because they voted for me to lower inflation, and that helps everything. Because they voted for me to lower poverty and indigence. And that helps everyone, because they voted for me to grow the economy, and I'm doing it. And they voted for me to make Argentina great again, and I'm doing it. That is to say, and that benefits all Argentines, that is, whether they are liberals, libertarians, or whatever, or whether they are, let's say, of other ideas. That is to say, even if those of the state party want to sabotage, I am going to continue working for all Argentines. Javier Milei, thank you for having me. Thanks to you, Esteban. Huge pleasure, thank you.